So have you ever stood over your camera bag agonizing over what lens to take? Wide angle, prime, zooms. Suddenly a lightweight trip is turning into a bit of an expedition. But what if you could swap all that for just one lens? So on my last 5-week trip to Italy, I replaced all of these lenses with the 35-150 Tamron lens. And I saved myself quite a bit of space in my camera bag, not to mention the weight. I'll mention a few other advantages to traveling with a lens like this. I'll also mention a few things I didn't like and some extra purchases you might want to consider that makes it more of a complete lightweight kit. So this is not a technical review. I won't be showing lens charts or testing chromatic aberration or those other aspects. There's plenty of reviews online that cover those topics really well. It's more about my practical experience in using the lens while traveling. Did it do what I expected it to do? Was it reliable? Were the images as sharp as I wanted them to be? All of that sort of stuff. And I'll also mention anything I think the lens lacked. So all lenses are a compromise. If I want a wide aperture to photograph night skies or really out of focus backgrounds, the lens will be heavier and bulkier. And if I want a really long telephoto lens to pull in distant subjects, the lens will be much bulkier and heavier again. For the last couple of years, I've been working mainly with these three prime lenses, the 24, the 50 and the 85, with a super wide angle lens, the 14mm, and a 100-400 telephoto thrown in case I needed them, but mainly certainly just traveling with the three prime lenses. And what I found while I was traveling was that I often miss shots because of having the wrong lens on or taking too long to change lenses. And also I sometimes miss the in-between focal lengths, or the 85mm just wasn't enough of a telephoto to pull in some subjects. So the Tamron 35-150 lens, I think it strikes a really good balance between bulk and weight, a fairly wide aperture for low light photography and out of focus backgrounds, a good zoom range all the way from wide angle through to medium telephoto. The only lens I could find that's reasonably similar to this lens is the Sony 50-150, and it doesn't have quite the zoom range. It hasn't really got the wide angle. It's also much more expensive and bulkier, so I thought this lens was actually a better all-round lightweight travel lens. So the lens isn't light and it's not particularly small, but I found I could carry it quite easily for a day as long as I had a decent camera strap. And I really like the Peak Design camera straps. They're really well thought out. You can take them on and off quickly, and they also have a wide shoulder pad that has a grip on it, so it's not slipping off your shoulder if you're just carrying it over your arm. So after a few months of using this lens, I can say it's the lens I've been using most often. It's on the camera by default. The images are sharp and the contrast is really good. And I have no hesitation using it for commercial photography or videography. I also found that when I came back from traveling, I had a much better range of images. I think the advantage of being able to quickly respond to situations and get the shot far outweighs the advantages of slightly better low light performance and sharpness from the prime lenses. It's unfortunate that the lens doesn't come with a lens collar. I had to buy one, a third-party lens collar, because the lens is significantly heavy that it's a bit shaky if you're mounting it on the camera body to your tripod head. It also puts extra strain on the tripod head, and you're more likely to get camera shake through wind or vibrations. The second negative of this lens for me was the focusing. Although most of the time it's pretty responsive and fast, occasionally it would completely stop working, and the only way to fix it was for me to take the lens off or turn the camera off and on, which was a little bit of an annoyance. Not a game changer, but enough to be a bit frustrating. I'm not sure why it occurs. I've never had it happen with any of the Sony lenses I own. The third issue I should talk about is lens flare, because it's been mentioned in some other reviews. I didn't find it a particularly big problem, though the lens flare when you're shooting into the sun certainly is a lot more noticeable than with the Sony prime lenses. There are some tricks you can use, such as putting your finger in front of the lens during a second exposure. That's quite fiddly. That can completely get rid of lens flare, however. But for general use, I didn't find the lens flare to be an issue with this lens. So what would I add to this kit to make it a more complete, lightweight travel expedition kit? Certainly a polarizing filter. A polarizing filter is a filter I'm hardly ever without as a landscape photographer. I just find it extremely useful. I've done a video on polarizing filters, and you can link to that in the description or up here in the corner. Sometimes I also travel with a 24mm prime lens. It just gives me extra versatility for that extra wide angle. So sometimes I find the 35mm isn't quite wide enough. The other thing I would definitely add to the kit is a lens collar, as mentioned before. I should also mention these programmable buttons on the side of the lens, of which there are 3. So the lens has a USB-C port, which means you can plug it into a computer, Mac or PC. And via the Tamron Lens Utility software, you can update the lens firmware or apply different functions to each of the 3 custom buttons. For me, the most practical use I found was to program the 3 buttons for A/B focus for videos, so rack focus, or basically shifting from one focus point to another over a set period of time. But you can set the buttons up for other functions as well. So once the buttons are set up in the Tamron Lens Utility, out in the field I can set focus, press and hold one of the buttons, change the focus to a different point, press and hold the same button again, and then that button is programmed for A/B focus, so that when I next press the button, it'll change from focus point A to focus point B. Press the button again, it'll go from B to A. So I found that really useful. So that's my take on the Tamron 35-150 lens. In a nutshell, I'd recommend it to anyone looking for a high quality, versatile lens. When you can only take one lens, I think this one is hard to beat. And sure, it's not the most compact lens in the world, but as I said earlier, all lenses are a compromise. Let me know in the comments your thoughts on this lens, or if you have an alternative favorite travel lens. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.